Hello, Piers. Thanks for inviting people to come onto your program and air their views on things they feel passionately about. My name's Tom Darwood. I'm also known as Josie77.com is my website. I'm behind bars, as you can see, for a very good reason. That since 2002, when I first advocated in a huge website called Reformation2.com, three essential things. One, the most important, is that I felt Christendom within the encompass of Western civilization is the realization of all that the Creator intended for humanity to possess through art and science to become proficient custodians. The life of Christ was only an attempt to make eye contact with humanity through that unique figure. But I believe through the ages, the Creator added and increased that eye contact. Like everything else, when we have a relationship, we know just how wonderful that eye contact can lead to. We do not remain there, but we join it with whatever we have in mind, whether it's a relationship based to lead towards marriage or to share a life or an idea. This is as simple as that, but I've traced it theologically to justify that statement. And that was created in the era that we call colonialism, when a group of nations, Britain, Europe and America, advanced beyond all other nations because they were blessed with what I describe as the gift of comprehension to service the call to duty. This empowered this group of nations with the acquisition of power, which made them supreme above all other nations, and created an empire made up of nations. The colonial era, and as I've said, the British Empire was the most illustrious illustration of what the Almighty achieved by quickening the thinking, creative process through memory, imagination and reason. And that was something which the early church did not understand or saw coming. And that is my chief task, to convey to the Church of England first of all. And because I allied it to the second most important thing, which was for the Queen to constitutionally conclude the hereditary monarchy in order to endorse that particular message. Thirdly, I also convey to people that in my 70th years of life, how old was I? 2002. I'm now 76, so you can work it out. I then conveyed in that same website that the Almighty had conferred upon me, not anybody else, only divine grace, that I was being prepared to become the future Archbishop of Canterbury, leading to become the future monarch, which is going to eventually lead me to become the future Pope. And that these three figures are meant to symbolize what Christendom within the fabric of Western civilization is meant to achieve for all of humanity. That one day I'll become a figurehead to represent Britain, Europe and America as a singularity. It will also lead me to become a theological figurehead to reflect what the Creator had in mind upon the allegorical Adam of the allegorical Eden of Genesis, which became reality through history, through that period that we call colonialism. Alongside of that, we know the abuse of power through slavery and social deprivation marred that particular era. But let us not diffuse the greatness when in that era, how is it that this particular group of nations, and they were white nations, not because God favoured them, it was inadvertent, it was the what's the phrase, unintended consequence. The white nations chose Christianity as their chief religion based upon Christ. They were unaware that the same God that sent Christ was also going to download art and science in a similar period in the Renaissance to denote great art, and in the Enlightenment to denote great reason, the basis of science. Now, this is the message that I believe I can be led to Buckingham Palace, not to receive an apology, but to become your future king. Now I say that respectfully because I've said it since Good Friday 2002, and when you examine my website you'll see all the remarkable events alluding to Prime Minister Macmillan when he said to a journalist, asked him, what do politicians fear the most? He replied, events, dear boy, events, meaning when something happens close to what you propagated, that's going to endorse you more than anything else, because providence is the whole world, something happening outside of anybody's effort to create. And you will see the remarkable events in providence, and I'll just very quickly paint three. On the 1st of April 1972, 1 week before that, I made a distinct prayer of faith to the Almighty, and I said, Lord, will you confer upon me that you have chosen me to revise the Book of Common Prayer. That was a very specific prayer. The next Saturday, when I sat beside my father, when he usually read the Daily Telegraph and then pass it on to me, I would only look at the pictures. I wasn't very good at reading, and I saw an article which stared me in the face, and it said at the end of the article, the failure to revise this 400-year-old well-loved book, and it finished, perhaps the future Thomas Cranmer can come forth and revise this wonderful book. Now, when I read that, I immediately gave an arrow prayer to the Almighty and said, Lord, if you're asking me to do this, is it also you're leading me to become the future Archbishop of Canterbury? Because the Book of Common Prayer was written by Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, chosen by Henry VIII. It's amazing the things that go back to Henry VIII. And he turned the Latin rubrics into memorable English. Now I will show you later how I've devolved the autocracy of a single book into an indigenous liturgy which invites every person in the church to contribute to the liturgy in a personal version in the likeness of a lover, and a corporate version to represent the whole church in the language of blank verse, going back to Shakespearean language, so to speak, in order to join the past to the present to the future. Now, when I published that huge website on Good Friday 2002, and to summarise, I said the British Empire ended at the same time as the Queen acceded to the throne, and she is the person who the Almighty has chosen to conclude constitutionally the hereditary monarchy, because the hereditary monarchy flanked the era of colonialism and flanked the era of the British Empire. The next day, the death of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, endorsed everything that I said, because everybody in the media said the death of the Queen Mother symbolises the end of the British Empire. So you see the connection there. When this happened, the Holy Spirit quickened my thinking and turbocharged it until I reached a theological position whereby exactly 3 years later the death of Pope John Paul symbolised the 33 years since the 1st of April to 30 years to the death of the Queen Mother, and then 3 years exactly to the death of Pope John Paul II. Those 33 years are gathered all the necessary theological arguments to justify the Queen stepping down to endorse this theological message, because they were exactly 33 years, which reflects the lifespan of the Lord Jesus Christ when he successfully achieved his mission on earth. Now, I haven't successfully achieved my mission yet, but what has been achieved is vital. It is the theological arguments which is going to justify and return the Church of England to Rome in order to convert Roman Catholicism to act with the will of a Protestant mind. I'll just very quickly say this. What is the difference it's going to make to the ordinary man and woman in the street? I'll give you just one example. What I've been revealed is that Christ didn't die for original sin. He died for our evolutionary development as prescribed by Charles Darwin. Coming hot on the heels of Christ is art and science. That empowered the same evolutionary development to progress. In that era of colonialism, because the church didn't understand this message, they persecuted someone who was gay, or someone who wanted divorce, or someone who wanted sex before marriage. The sharpness of the moral code was so severe because they thought Christ died because of original sin. My message will release the shackles which will no longer say it is wrong to be gay, it is wrong to have sex before marriage, provided you're doing it morally and carefully and responsibly. This is not free for all, and it's also right to have divorce. What it is doing, Piers, is releasing the shackles of that previous era, the way the church looked at people. This message will also empower any political party to take this up, because it's going to add to their political views something so powerful. Once they understand it, it's going to level up and create political and economic growth, the one word that politicians want to hear. Now I want to end this short talk very quickly now, Piers, if I may. We all know that recently you abhor the unintended, well, I'm being kind now to two people who you know, and I share your views on what they're doing, foolishly, arrogantly, and to my astonishment, they're not even aware what they're doing. I think something is seriously wrong, and will separate that relationship very soon. I don't wish that on them. I do not wish that on them, but I fear that's what could happen. The other event is when a charity worker of African origin, who was born in this country I believe, and she went to Buckingham Palace at an invitation to charity workers, dressed in my view in a way which made it difficult for someone not to think of her in relation to the Africa of colonialism. And we know that a high official in Buckingham Palace was, shall we say, inept, inexperienced in dealing with someone, and I don't want to use the phrase lower rank, but that was the situation. Someone, yes, she was CEO of a charity, and good luck to her, but both acted in a way which could have been avoided. Now, to conclude that story, the charity worker demanded and was slightly arrogant in my view, and to say, I'm going to call this out as racism. Had she said, I felt hurt by the lady, and I'm sorry she treated me that way, she would have endeared many people to her. She didn't endear me to her because I felt she's been arrogant, and demand an apology to see the king even. Well, I'm glad Lady Hustle was reinstated to her position and that they've been reconciled. But I want to finish with that moment when that woman says she suffered racism. Fair enough, I'll let her have that. I want to talk and finish about what real racist hatred can do to a family. 60 years ago, when I was 16, I came home from school with my younger brother and found our darling mother who took her own life. The father told us afterwards she had been racially harassed for many years, and because we came from China, she had no education when she was young, and she found it difficult, even though we came at 1954, and in 1962 she found she couldn't cope with the racial abuse. She was a very timid lady and not well educated. She didn't know how to hurt anybody. Now that, Piers, I understand what real racism is. Not a moment when that woman felt offended, but a lifetime of suffering. A lifetime. And I've never held it against the British people. I did what Christ did on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I believe, Piers, when you listen to my story in my website, you can help me to be presented before King Charles, and I will be his true heir and successor. And I've shown you my website, how King Charles, when he abdicates, he can become the future Charles I of the United States of America. Now, if that doesn't excite you, Piers, I don't know what will. God save the King. Thank you, Piers. Hello again, Piers. I need to finish with something that's very important to show you why so few people know about me. After the general election 2019, when I was a candidate in South and West, and I called myself Joseph 77, remarkably 574 people voted for me, and I'm very grateful and proud. But the important thing is that I made a mark that I could do exactly what I said then, to replicate the biblical Joseph who dealt with Pharaoh's two nightmares, which was essentially a question of dealing with climate change. The 7 years of bounty would deal with the 7 years of barrenness, a perfect illustration of climate change. But Joseph dealt with it because of divine grace when he understood what Pharaoh's 2 dreams meant. Now, I don't want to expand any more on that. That's in my website. I do want to allude to one thing after the 2019 general election. You will remember Boris Johnson said, "Let's get Big Ben to bong." And everybody loved the idea. Perfect illustration of Johnsonian ideas. Within a few days, he said, "No, it's costing too much." I want you to think about this, Piers. Within 48 hours, I claimed the website name bigbenbong.com through GoDaddy. You can check this for your researchers. I believe Boris Johnson deliberately cancelled that because he knew if millions of people knew about what I was saying regarding what I've just said relating to the abdication of the Queen, and now that argument still remains for the King to abdicate, you will see that there are people who know and believe that I can achieve what it says on the tin. I can do exactly what it says on the tin, and you will be up against it, Piers, and I would like to see how you're going to deal with it. I cannot say categorically that that is what happened, but I'll find it difficult not to believe that that is what Boris Johnson did, having excited people. And what is £500,000 when the pandemic came shortly after was going to cost billions? No, he did it knowing he was advised, possibly by Buckingham Palace or the Church of England, don't let people know about what this man is saying. I don't want to allude any more than that, Piers. I just want you to know that. Go into references in my website and look at the amazing incidents which tells you I'm up against the government itself and possibly also Buckingham Palace. Thank you, Piers.